morning. This meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee will come to order. Before taking up the agenda, I want to acknowledge Brian Palmer. Brian, would you raise your hand? Brian's here every day and has got an announcement to make that he is moving to Minneapolis. I think Senator Klobuchar finally got to him, and he's going to be closer to his family. He's really put in the hours in getting these hearings prepared and ready to go, tackling the tough challenges sometimes of the equipment before us, facing this pandemic himself and what it's meant to his work schedule. And I just want to thank him for all that he's done for the committee and wish him the very best in his next undertaking. Brian, thanks a lot. We have 5 nominees, 5 bills. The nominees have been listed for the first time and will be held over. They are Nancy Abudu for the 11th Circuit, Judge Michelle Childs for the D.C. Circuit, Judge Anna D'Alba for the Eastern District of California, Nusrat Chaudhry for the Eastern District of New York, and Natasha Murrell for the Eastern District of New York. We also have on our agenda 5 bipartisan bills in honor of Police Week. S. 3635, the Public Safety Officer Support Act of 2022, will be held over, and we will turn to the remaining bills after brief remarks from myself and the ranking member, Senator Grassley. In 1962, President Kennedy signed a law authorizing the President to designate May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which it falls is Police Week. This is a critically important week to honor the men and women who serve in law enforcement across America and bravely protect us, and particularly to honor those who have fallen in the line of duty. Being a police officer has always been a challenge, but it's particularly tough these last few years. Officers on the beat continue to confront the challenges of pandemic and the spikes in shootings that communities all around the country are experiencing. We know gun violence is the #1 cause of police officer killings in the line of duty. I will never forget the funeral service for Chicago police officer Ella French, who was murdered last year during a routine traffic stop by an armed attacker with a straw purchase gun. My wife and I went to Rita High School, where the chapel was dedicated for a memorial service for her. I just want to let you know that that image of blocks and blocks of uniformed police from all different types of police departments, large and small, and of course the Chicago Police Department, standing in uniform and waiting, some for hours, to pay their respects, is an image that will never escape me. It'll be with me forever. And I want to make sure that I always remember that when I speak about the sacrifices that are made by officers in the line of duty. I have spoken to her mother several times since the incident, and her mom has said, I just hope that her life will be remembered and will make a difference. And I hope that what we do in this committee will be a tribute to her and all of the fallen officers. In the coming weeks, this committee will hold a hearing to examine the threats law enforcement officers face from these violent attacks. She was killed with a straw purchase gun. Somebody went into a gun store with a clean record, bought a gun, handed it over to a convicted felon who killed her. Just that basic. That straw purchases are not bookkeeping issues. They are life and death issues, and the loss of that wonderful officer is proof of it. Police departments and sheriff's offices also face incredible challenges with recruitment, retention, high turnover, burnout, and fatigue. These challenges have led to another serious problem. I got on a phone call, Zoom call this week with a half dozen sheriffs and chiefs of police from across Illinois for an off-the-record impromptu discussion of the challenges they're facing. They made it clear that one of the major challenges that they worry about is losing these law enforcement officers to suicide. It was a sobering conversation of what they're living through. In the city of Chicago, we have one of the highest rates of police officer suicide in America, 60% above the national average. This Police Week, we're working to address these challenges. We have on our agenda bipartisan bills to provide law enforcement and their families more support for mental health and help make sure officers have the resources and training to do their jobs safely and effectively. Let me be clear, effective law enforcement is critical to ensuring public safety, but law enforcement alone will not solve the problems that they face. We can only create safe communities by investing in those communities as well. We can and must address the root causes of crime by addressing poverty that leads to desperation and misguided choices. We also have to address the issue of trauma. A 16-year-old in gangland fashion killed a 15-year-old 2 weeks ago in Chicago. When you looked at his background, at the age of 2, his mother was convicted for killing his father, and she's still in prison. This young boy has gone back and forth from foster care, back and forth to different families, and unfortunately found a home with the gangs. And at 16, he has a rap sheet, which is just, it's terrible to imagine. But those are real life circumstances that we can't ignore. Safe communities are communities where people have access to good jobs, pay a living wage, quality education, safe and affordable housing, health care, and counseling, which is a critical element necessary in many of our schools. We must deploy proven crime prevention strategies such as trauma-informed care, community violence intervention, and safe passage to school. Finally, we must continue the work of restoring trust between law enforcement and communities. As I've said repeatedly, the vast majority of police officers are good people doing their very best in a difficult, dangerous job. They confront situations most of us cannot imagine. We also know we are asking our police officers to do much, taking on the role of first responders in a crisis where mental health professionals often would be more appropriate. Speaking to the chiefs this week, one gave me an example. He said, one of my officers was trying to revive a 3-year-old boy who stopped breathing with CPR. He lost him. He turned around. His next assignment was a naloxone administration of a fellow whose life he saved, who came around, became conscious, and turned violent against the police who had saved his life. That is the reality of a day's work in many police departments. There have been broad bipartisan calls for police reform. I want to thank Senator Booker for his leadership on this issue and his patient determination to find good policy reforms, to build trust and make our system of law enforcement work better. If we're willing to roll up our sleeves and set aside partisanship, we can get this done. I'm thankful for all of the efforts on this committee, but especially Senator Booker. I wanted to single him out for the hard work he put in. This police week, we're not going to solve all the challenges at once, but let's do those things we can achieve, those bipartisan steps to support law enforcement. I now turn to Senator Grassley for opening remarks.